Hello, Quincy. My name's Eileen Fontenot, and I'm a librarian with the Thomas Crane Library. I'm here today with Ray Ajemian, and he is going to speak to us about a presentation he's going to be doing on Tuesday, September 17th at the main library about the Armenian genocide. Welcome, Ray.
Thank you.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, very quickly. I'm not originally from the area, from Detroit, and I studied Middle Eastern history at the University of Michigan, getting 2 degrees there. And it's, the interest in the Middle East, and in particular the Armenian genocide, has always been part of me, partly because I am Armenian and my mother was a survivor of the genocide.
Oh, wow. And I feel as if there are a lot of people that might not be aware of the Armenian genocide as much as other atrocities in history, and it causes an impact on today's society. Could you tell us a little bit about the background of this?
Well, the genocide took place during World War I, in particular in 1915 was the main part. And it was basically an attempt by the then Turkish government to eliminate what they considered to be a threat to the country. World War I was going on. The Turks had allied themselves with the Germans, and they also had hopes of moving eastward, which meant through the Armenian highlands. And they considered the Armenians a threat, in particular that they would be a fifth column, that they would help the Allies against the Turks. And so there was, it's a controversial issue in that the Turks have, up to today, denied that it was an actual genocide. The term genocide, I'm not sure whether people are aware of, came about after World War II. And there's a definition to what a genocide is. And most historians today regard what happened in 1915 to the Armenians as a genocide.
And how many people were killed?
It varies. There's different estimates. It's hard to tell, but it's between 1 and 1.5 million Armenians were killed. At that time, up to 1915, the Armenians in the eastern provinces of the Ottoman Empire were not necessarily a majority, but they're a heavy minority, and they were eliminated during World War I.
And before all this happened, were they they were a minority that were persecuted before as well? Or?
There were killings in 1895 and in 1909, but without going into too much detail, the Ottoman Turks allowed the various minorities, including Jews, Greeks, and so forth, to, in a sense, govern themselves. And the Armenians were the largest group. So if there was a dispute between two Armenians, it would be the dispute would be settled by the Armenian church. Armenians were Christians, and that was part of the problem. But if there was a dispute between Armenian and Turk, the Turkish government would settle it.
Oh, okay. And Turkish people are Muslim, is that correct?
Yes, the Turks are Muslims.
Right.
Yeah, they're Sunni Muslims.
Oh, okay. And how does that impact world events today, and how does the U.S. kind of involve itself in it?
Again, as I said before, the word genocide did not come about until the end of World War II. Raphael Lemkin invented the word, and the United Nations defined genocide as a crime against humanity. And there are specific parts to what a genocide is. The United States did not adopt that until years later. And they have never, although each year the Armenians commemorate the genocide on April 15th. That's because that's essentially when it started. The United States has never called it a genocide, where most other countries have. And that's because probably because the Turks today are our ally. We have a large air base in southern Turkey, the Incirlik Air Base. And the United States government doesn't want to irritate the Turkish government, and the Turkish government has denied it as being a genocide all along, and they as strong as ever now.
Oh wow! What do they call it? Like, what do they say
that there was killings on both sides, and that the Armenians were, in a sense, part of the problem, and that they admit that killings took place, but it wasn't considered. They argued it was not something from the top down.
Oh, okay.
And there have been a number of books that have come out recently that essentially argue that there is proof without going into detail.
Right, right. So this is continuing research that's going on today.
Well, I'll give you one example. Taner Akam, who was the Armenian, the professor of Armenian Studies at Clark University in Worcester is Turkish.
Okay.
And he has done some of the best work on the genocide, and he calls it a genocide.
And why is it important that we call it a genocide and rather not just a fight or an altercation? Or,
well, I think it goes back to not just the Armenians, but the Jewish Holocaust and so forth. If you don't acknowledge something has happened, it's considered a second killing in a sense. That there has to be some acknowledgement to get over the trauma of the genocide. And that's basically why the Armenians would just simply like it recognized by the Turkish government that a genocide took place.
Okay.
And by the way, nobody's blaming the present Turkish government. It's the government of 1915.
Right, right. Is there, you say that your presentation is going to be illustrated? Can you give me a little preview about that?
It's a PowerPoint presentation, which takes place, it takes about 40 minutes, and obviously people can ask questions. And I just trace the history of the genocide in terms of the different groups of people, what happened in World War I, then the after effect of World War I up to today. And basically show how the United States, I'll show how the United States responded in a very positive way during the genocide. Much of the aid to help the orphans and so forth came from the United States. If I might add that the Americans had a large number of missionaries in Turkey at that time, and those missionaries publicized what was going on, and they brought about a lot of aid from the United States to help the orphans.
Okay. And how do you feel it's important that we know about it today, like as part of the whole picture of the world?
Well, again, it's nice. I think acknowledging that something bad has happened is important, and it is particularly important to the Armenians. But I think it's important to everybody to be able to realize that it happened. Let's try to get over it, and acknowledgement has to happen though.
Are the people in Turkey still feeling the repercussions of this?
The Turkish education system teaches that nothing happened.
Oh.
So, and the Turkish government today is very strongly against the recognition of the genocide. But I think you're seeing many Turks, educated Turks, understand today, and Taner Akam is one perfect example, that in terms of the research that has been done, it was a genocide. So I have hope. I have hope.
We have hope to spread the word.
I hope, whether in my lifetime or not, but I hope that will happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for joining us.
Well,
I really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been enjoyable.
Yeah, I hope to see everyone here in Quincy to join Mr. Agemian on Tuesday, September 17th at 7 o'clock at the main library, and we'll learn more about the Armenian genocide at that time.